Hello everybody, welcome to 2-5, solving for a variable. Now, this is the last section we're going to be doing before we take the Chapter 2 kind of Part 1 test. And in this section we are going to learn how to solve for a certain variable, and usually the equations will have more than one variable in them. Now, just a word of caution. The steps in this section are very similar to all the steps we've been following in all the other sections. But what happens usually in this section is that people see more than one letter and they kind of freak out. Like, holy cow, there's a bunch of letters, I don't know what to do. So just get that out of your system. If you need to scream that right now, go ahead. And then just try to focus on the steps that we follow, because I think if you do that and you don't let yourself get overwhelmed by the fact that there's more than one letter, you'll be able to figure out these problems. We have two vocab words today: formula and literal equation. Formula is an equation that states a rule for a relationship among quantities. So you might have heard of something like the distance formula or the quadratic formula. It's really just an equation with more than one variable, essentially. Very similar to what a literal equation is. A literal equation is an equation with two or more variables. So these two vocab words are kind of talking about the same thing. We just use the word formula, like for example, if I was trying to calculate distance, it would be based on rate and time, of course. D equals rate times time. Okay, that states a relationship between distance and the rate and the time. Okay, that's what a formula is. So let's dive right in and look at the steps that we're going to follow. So when we solve for a variable, the first thing we do, just like we have been doing, is we find the variable that we're asked to solve for. Now, like I said, there's probably going to be more than one variable, so you got to find the right letter. And then the second step is identify the operations that are happening on this variable and the order in which they are applied. That should sound familiar. That's exactly what we did with two-step equations. We're going to be doing the same thing. And then the third thing is we're going to, again, use inverse operations to undo these operations in the reverse order and get the variable by itself. Okay, these steps should look so familiar to you because they've what I've been preaching to you for 4 sections now. Okay? So let's look at some examples. And again, don't get freaked out by all the letters. Alright? So here's our first one. F equals I minus GT. I can hear you now. There's no numbers. Don't worry about that. Okay? Let's follow our steps. F equals I minus GT. Our first step was to find the variable we're solving for. We can see here it says solve for I. So here's I. There it is, I found it. Second step, identify what's happening to I. So we ask, what's going on with I here? What operations are happening? Well, you can see that there's really just one thing happening to it, and that's that it's being subtracted by GT. Okay, so to undo that, I'm going to add GT. And the rule still applies. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So let's go ahead and do that. Plus GT plus GT. Okay? So over here, these aren't like terms. I can't make FGT or anything like that. So I just write exactly what it says. F plus GT equals I. Now I'm done. I've done what it asked me to do. I've figured out what I equals. Okay? Now it doesn't equal a number like you're used to, but I've gotten I by itself, and that was my goal. Let's look at another one. Hopefully this formula looks familiar. It's the formula for the area of a triangle, and it's asking us to solve for H. So here's my buddy H. And I ask, what's happening to H? Well, it's being multiplied by B, and it's also being multiplied by 1/2. Okay, and I could have put those in any order because they're both multiplication. So, to undo that, let's divide by a half first. Now dividing by a half, remember, hopefully, this is the same as timesing by 2 over 1. So let's do that. Let's times by 2 over 1. So over here, the 2's cancel, the 1's cancel. I just have B, H. And over here, this is really like A over 1, so I just get 2A. And then to undo times B, I'm going to divide by B. So divide by B. So then I get H equals 2A over B. And again, I've done what was asked of me. I've got H by itself. So H equals 2A over B. Here's kind of a fun one. S equals W minus 10E over M. So it says solve for E. So again, we find E. Here it is. What's happening to E? Well, the first thing I see is that it's being multiplied by negative 10. And again, like we've been talking about for the last couple of days, the reason I put a negative 10 is because the sign in front always goes with the number after it. So that negative sign doesn't go with the W. It goes with the 10. Okay? So that's times negative 10. Then the second thing you see is that W. Now, I know that you probably want to say it's being subtracted by W, but it's not. W is positive. So this is actually plus W. And then the third thing, yep, this one has 3, is it's being divided, remember that's what the fraction bar means, divided by M. Okay, so now, again, reverse order, inverse operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is times by M. So times M, times M. M's are going to cancel. So I have SM over here equals W minus 10E. Okay, opposite of plus W minus W. So let's do that. So those aren't like terms, so that's just SM minus W equals negative 10E. Okay, I'm running out of room here. I'm going to move this last problem a little bit further down. Okay, and then the last thing I have is to undo times negative 10, so I'm going to divide by negative 10. And I have to divide this whole thing by negative 10. So negative 10's over here, cancel. And I have SM minus W over negative 10. And I'm done. I've gotten the E by itself. Okay, last one. I gave you lots of examples here just because this is usually a tough section. So I want you to really kind of focus in and listen to what I'm saying. So here I'm going to solve this equation for y. So the first thing I want to do, find y. Here it is. What's happening to it? Well, the first thing I see is that it's times 7. The second thing that I see is plus 2x. Okay, so again, let's undo those. Opposite of plus 2x, minus 2x. So over here, these guys are going to go away. I have 7y equals 14 minus 2x. Okay, Then opposite of times 7, divide by 7. So I'm going to divide by 7 here, and I'm going to divide by 7 here. 7's cancel, so I get y equals 14 minus 2x all over 7. Now one other thing I want to mention here is when I divide by 7, I could break it up. Okay, so like this answer is acceptable. I could also I could have thought of it like this: 14 over 7 minus 2x over 7. And if I thought of it like that, 14 over 7 is 2. So then I have this. Both of those are acceptable answers. I will tell you though that this second one right here is the more common one that you would see. Okay, because this gets into slope-intercept, which is something we'll get to later on. But if you understand how to get to this second one, just go ahead and do that, because that's the more common, and that's what you'll have to do eventually. But for right now, I would accept either answer. Alright, so there's 2-5 for you. Again, please don't get freaked out by all the letters. Okay, I hope you saw through all those examples that we're just following the same steps. Okay, our answers just look a little bit different than before. And again, if this didn't make sense to you, please watch it again, or after you've watched it again, if it still doesn't make sense, make sure that you come in and get some extra help on it, okay? We'll see you guys later.